Let me ask you a question. Have you ever imagined a world without any music? No music. You can answer. That's great. Right answer. So you're on a road trip, you put your keys in the ignition, you get down the highway, windows down, weather's great, but there's no beat, no melody to commemorate the moment. You go to a wedding, it's a long wedding, and you get to the reception, and there's no, oh, that's not yet, and there's no band, there's no cake, there's nothing to commemorate the moment. Have you thought about that? Have you been to an ATL United game? Think about this, with 1 minute left on the clock, the crowd's going crazy, but there's no chant, there's no song, there's no no music, none. It'd be a strange world, right? Well, for this past year, the music stopped playing for many of us. And for music makers, the opportunity to even play music was removed. This created a unique problem. My name is Micah, Dalton. I'm the co-founder of ATL Collective, a nonprofit dedicated to enriching Atlanta's music community through preservation, education, and relationship building. For the past 10 years, some of you may have seen some of our performances here in Atlanta venues. But before I get into that, I want to show you a slide. This is me in 2005 with a really weird hat on. And though it looks like I'm playing for a very large group, maybe an arena, I'm actually only playing for probably 4 people at that time, 4 people max. And in that moment, I had no money. My relationships were a mess. And generally, I was just a very serious and earnest young man, as is evidenced by this picture. The bottom line is a life in music can be disruptive and hard. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever been asked backstage to a concert to be with the band? You can answer. No? Okay, some yes. Being backstage can be special, right? It can be validating by association. But being backstage, being with the band can also be difficult. It's kind of real, maybe too real. You know, you learn about who's coping with anxiety and depression, how someone's tour is going, how their kids are doing. To be with the band is to both be with the song and the song maker, to be in the mess and to be in the pretty, in both places. That is why ATL Collective is committed to being with the band on stage and backstage. In the wake of the COVID-19 crisis, ATL Collective developed the With the Band Live Music Fund, a crisis resource serving Atlanta's most vulnerable musicians. If you've heard of the Giving Kitchen here in Atlanta, that fund inspired what we hope to do with this. Before I go on, I want to kind of explain how we did this, because I think that's important. Otis Moss III talks about something called the jazz ethic. We're talking about music, so I'm going to talk about a jazz ethic. I appreciate that. So, what is the jazz ethic? Otis Moss III talks about Wynton Marsalis in 2001 performing at the Village Vanguard. Marsalis is landing his set softly on his last song. Everybody's about to stand up for a standing ovation. But instead, the unthinkable happens. Somebody's cell phone rings. And this is 2001, so it's probably like a Nokia cell phone ring. It's not the cool cell phone rings we have now. So this is the end of his set. He begins to pull back. The awkwardness is palpable in the room. Marsalis gathers himself. He begins to noodle around the melody, around the Nokia melody, finding the key that melody is playing in. Eventually, he begins to match that ring note for note, note for note. And as the ring continues, that's right, it's still continuing. So somehow this phone is not turned off yet. He begins to improvise in and around that melody until the ring subsides and he goes back to his last song and softly lands the set to a very, very, very happy crowd. That is a jazz ethic. ATL Collective, when we were faced with the need to improvise, we had to know the scale of our community well enough to that when we did improvise, it manifested as a new kind of promise, the With the Band Live Music Fund. To this date, the fund has been able to support people facing eviction, helping with bill pay, and also secondary effects just that come from COVID-19 and not being able to perform together. So what's next? We hope that a community reserve of $50,000 can help sustain over 50 musicians over the next few years facing a variety of crises. So if you would stand with the band with me, and let's invest in the culture that is so intensely invested into us as a city with this $5,000. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Stay with me. Micah, you get a question, so you're gonna stay. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Micah. That was wonderful. Judges, we would love to get one question for this presenter, and I am compelled, and I'm gonna butcher this name because of course everybody's watching me right now, but the fabulous person who obviously has like a connection to music, because when he said something you were like, would you mind posing the question for Micah?
Good. Yeah.
And forgive me for not getting
No, it's all good. Donnell.
Donnell.
Like Donnell Jones, since we're gonna make that musical connection, spelled that way. Micah, my question would be connected to kind of the leadership that could go along with this platform that you have, the ATL Collective. And so my question will, how will you use your stage to play a role in unity for ATL? You kind of gave us some indicators of what that has looked like in past, but as you think about what you presented today, specifically as it responds to something like COVID, how are you using the stage to bring unity?
Yeah. Well, right now live performance is obviously not what it was, but we plan on using our live performance as a way of highlighting the needs of the community, respecting things like anonymity, but highlighting the felt and real needs of the community, almost seeing our performances as fundraising events for this fund. So if someone comes to a show, they can see ATL Collective not only as a mechanism to enjoy local culture, but also to put a face with a name, figure out who the culture makers are and their needs, so that this fund can interface uniquely there.
So good. Do I have time for a follow-up?
A quick one.
What inspires you right now with music?
I think it's been democratized in a way that is special. And I think that sounds are becoming more indigenous in unique ways, even though we've been separated by things like Zoom and technology. I think people are learning ways to let music endure through the difficulty of the pandemic, and that's becoming more localized in a special way. A lot of people are saying it's not because we haven't been able to get together, but I think ultimately it will result in both the artists and the fans being able to connect in a deeper way and being able to understand their place better through music.
Thank you.
I'm glad we asked that question because I loved that answer. Thank you. Give him one more round of applause.